Regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, May 6th, 2024. We're going to go into executive session. I don't think this will take long, but we'll be back. Could I get a motion to go into executive session, please? Oh, I'm sorry, pledge. You're right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right. Now could I get a motion to go into executive session, please? Mike moves. Sarah second. All in favor? All right. We'll be back. Could I have a motion to go back into regular session? Sarah moves. Marcy seconds. All in favor? Okay. Okay. First Selectmen's report. A couple things. I attended an emergency symposium in Niantic. So this was a gathering of emergency services professionals from all over the state, and it's quite impressive to actually see the caliber of individuals who are associated with emergency work both at the municipal and at the state level. But it was a pretty robust discussion about a number of topics, including drug use and equipment, and I just was very impressed by the caliber of people that the state has in these very critical functions. So I appreciate being invited to that. On Saturday, I attended at the Mather Homestead. It was a visit from the 2nd Regiment Light Dragoons. This was a reenactment group, and they came out and provided a history lesson, had all kinds of arts and crafts, and this one woman was talking to me for a while, and about 30 minutes later, she came up and she says, well, I did a little pencil sketch of you. And it's very nice. She did a sketch while I was standing there. So anyway, it was very nice to talk to those people. So if you have a chance to go to the Mather Homestead, anytime they have things like this, it was terrific. Thanks to the Darien Foundation and Sarah Woodbury, who is their leader, as well as others who play an important role there. I had a chance to go to their fundraising event that evening and had a chance to meet and visit with a lot of people who provide support for the Darien Foundation. And I just am very thankful the Darien Foundation provides a lot of important financial support to various initiatives around town. And it was terrific to go there and spend time with everybody who's part of that. So thank you for that invitation. And then Tuesday I went to the Community Funds volunteer celebration and had a chance to speak at that, Janet King's invitation. And anytime you get a chance to celebrate volunteers in this town, as I said, it's the gas in the tank that keeps Darien going, and then corrected myself and said it's the 21st century. It's supposed to be the battery charging the car in Darien. But anyway, it was a great celebration, and a number of folks got awards that night. So thank you to volunteers. So we can't say it enough. I also had a chance on Thursday to go to the inaugural event for the Stamp Out Hunger initiative put on by Person to Person. Nancy Coughlin and Courtney Galvin, who invited me to that. It was actually over at the Postal Service Distribution Center in Stamford, which is sort of south of 95. If you've never been there, it's a gigantic Amazon-type facility where they sort mail. And the staff there, they actually sort the mail for Darien right now, so I had a chance to visit with the folks who help ensure that we get good mail delivery. So I appreciated meeting those folks. It was terrific. And then finally, this morning, I had a chance to attend the private promotions. There will be a public ceremony later, but we had 3 key promotions in the police department. Andy Mastriani was promoted from lieutenant to captain. Dan Scumbros was promoted from sergeant to the rank of lieutenant, and James Martin was promoted to the rank of sergeant. So well done to those individuals, and again, just an opportunity to thank everyone in the police department for what they do. It's terrific. And then finally, there's been ongoing controversy about the pending decision to establish a cannabis dispensary located in what's currently Smoky Joe's, or the Boatyard House, that barbecue place that's just over the Stamford line, right there on the Norotan River. The proposal is by a company called Nautilus Botanicals, and they're proposing the establishment of a marijuana dispensary there. Interestingly, the regulations are such now that you can't have just a medical dispensary. It's got to include recreational recreational cannabis. And so this has generated a fair bit of controversy. I've spoken a couple of times on that, and I know there's an effort to try not to get that approved. The meeting tonight is by the Stanford Zoning Board. It is a Zoom meeting. I think you could actually still register for it, but it started around 6:30, and I think 8:30 tonight is when they're scheduled to start talking about this particular establishment. So big thanks to a pop-up organization called Darien Speaks. It's a woman named Jacqueline Taylor who's been spearheading the collection of signatures. We have petitions with more than 1,100 signatures, if you can imagine, of people protesting the potential establishment of this business. Big shout out to Sal and Joanne LaDraca, who are the folks who own the Water's Edge at Giovanni's, which is right across the street. They're very concerned about this. Jennifer Gardner, who's the president of the YMCA, she's also sent out a letter concerned about this to all of her members. And I'll thank three folks from Stanford who've also been very involved in this. James Culver, Paul Brindak, and Tom Kaczynski. Tom is a member of the Stanford Board of Representatives and has been involved in trying to get the approvals denied for these businesses in Stanford. And it's just a wealth of information. He's absolutely terrific. And so thanks to everybody who's involved in that. Let's see how this hearing goes tonight. But again, if you're so motivated to speak, see if you can still register for that. So those are all my comments.
Is
Yes.
there still time to sign up?
Yes, so signing the petition, yes, there's always time to do that. There were 2 times that they scheduled this Friday and then I think yesterday over at Giovanni's. But if anybody's interested in that, drop me an email, look me up. I will send you the I'll send you the email to the team that's actually distributing the petition. So if someone wants to sign that or get more information about the process that they're pursuing, I can definitely connect you with that, so let me know. Okay. That's it for me. Kate?
Marley, our media relations manager, is working with department heads to create some detailed guides for businesses that will be put on the web to help them understand the process of permitting. Like, say you want to open a restaurant, all the things you need to do, the steps you need to follow. So really looking forward to seeing that. We made some updates to the evaluation process this year, and we are in the middle of all that going on. And then today we had our first negotiating session with the newly formed Darien Telecommunicators Union.
That's dispatchers.
It's the
Dispatchers. Okay. There's 9 individuals in that.
There are 8.
8.
We have 9
Higher.
spaces, but
Yep.
we have yet to hire number 9.
Okay.
Oh, and we are also, applications for the Director of Health position closed last week, and so we're in the process of setting up the screening panel to interview candidates. So later this month, we'll be talking to you about final interviews.
How many applicants do we have?
We had 4.
4? Okay. Okay, terrific. Thank you. Board liaison reports. Mr. Burke.
Blight Review has not met since our last meeting, but we are meeting this Wednesday, so
Okay.
we will have a report for you next time.
Okay. Marcy?
Good. Mental Health Task Force, just a reminder, their mental health first aid training is May 15th and 16th, 8:30 to 1 at Post 53. You have to commit to both days. Again, I remind everybody it's an incredible educational program for anyone. I'm particularly pushing 18 and over college kids that are home. It's a really good resource for them to go out in the world and bring that sort of knowledge back to their campuses. So last Sunday, we had the Suicide Prevention Walk, the Out of the Darkness Walk. It's our 2nd annual that we've had at Darien High School. It is the only one at a high school, so it was incredibly successful, really emotional, and really good outpour from students. Town of Darien raised over $16,000 to go through suicide prevention. Very, very proud of what was done, and I think a lot of the kids, again, felt connected to that cause. So
Terrific.
another
Thank you.
success.
Yep, that's great. Monica?
I'll catch up.
You'll catch up on that, okay? Sarah?
There have been no meetings in the interim for either Worthing Youth or for the Henley Homes and Royal Building Committee, but the Henley Homes and Royal Building Committee should be meeting next Wednesday, I believe.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Okay, public comments. Who would like to go first? Do we have a, Kate, is there a list over there?
Yeah, sorry. Rolf Hogan is first.
Rolf, nice to see you.
Good to see you. Good evening. My name is Rolf Oben. I live at 9 Archer Lane. Also a member of the RTM, serving with Public Works Committee. But anything I speak about tonight is solely my own expression. I'd like to speak about 3 topics. First being the flag policy. I'll keep this straight and simple to the point. I think the present policy is fine. No need to make any change as far as I'm concerned. Second topic is the beach projects. Weed Beach, Pear Tree Point Beach. I think the Parks Commission has done their job. They've come up with designs, they've gone out to the permitting process, they've vetted this through public hearings for both Weed Beach Meadow as well as the Pear Tree Point project. So it's time for the town to decide what to do. And these projects, particularly the Weed Beach Meadow, has been pending, that's a 10-year work in progress at this point and counting. The plan for Pear Tree Point has also been a long time coming because of various circumstances. The original building committee, and then COVID, of course, and then now another revised plan. But these projects, I think the town is ready to have done. I think there's people that are getting, myself included, frustrated. And so I'd like to see a plan be put together. I know that the Pear Tree Point is now deferred out to, what is it, 26, 27 budget? Okay, so.
No, we're talking about that tonight, so.
Yeah, so that's out there. But as I think you're aware with the permitting process, DEEP and the Army Corps of Engineers, there's a clock on that. So you really don't have much more time to defer, delay. You've got to make a decision, come up with a plan, and keep the process moving. And I feel that way for both projects. Okay, so that's that. The last thing is the special appropriation that's on the agenda tonight for up to $2 million to hire a consultant to develop the master plan for the Great Island. Being an RTM member, I assume that at some point this is going to come to the RTM for a vote as a special appropriation, which means, if I understand correctly, is outside of the budget. The budget, we're going to be meeting Public Works this coming Thursday, and then Monday, I believe, we're going to be voting on that in the RTM. So the budget is going to be history at that point, and this will be coming separately. So I think you're going to have to come up with a good presentation argument for approval of the appropriation. One thing I looked for and could not find with any attachments that were for tonight's agenda was this RFP, request for presentation. So I'm looking for an RFP to be attached as part of the package for tonight's agenda, and it's not there. There's no RFP attached. I couldn't find it. I went out to the website, did numerous searches, Great Island RFP, Town of Darien RFP, RFP, nothing came up. So if I'm going to vote on the RFP, I'm going to be very, very interested to read the RFP, understand the size and scope of the RFP, what are the deliverables, what are the various parts of, I think it's separated into at least 3 different phases. So I'm going to be very interested to understand all of that to make an educated vote. So I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to try and put something together to that effect, not only just for the RTM, but I'm sure the Board of Finance is going to be interested in that information as well. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Rolf. Okay, who's next?
Goody Gray.
Hello,
Hello.
Goody Gray. Do you need me to spell anything, or
No, but your address?
1 Brush Island Road? Okay, I am here as the current vice chair of the Darien DTC, and I believe I am speaking for all of our members, though I see some others here tonight, when I voice my request for all of you to please implement a town flag policy. Adopting a policy allows the town to fly flags that are approved by all of you, and at the same time will protect the town from legal liability around free speech issues. This is the flag policy I brought tonight. It's just over one page, adopted by the town of Greenwich. And I will submit it to you tonight, if you'd like, for your, as a template possibly, for your consideration. It allows federal, state, and local flags on the town property, as well as a legacy slate of flags. And they're voted on each January in Greenwich by their selectmen. This year, they approved unanimously a legacy lineup that included St. Patrick's Day, Breast Cancer Awareness, Columbus Day, Pride, and several others. So I would like to not shy away from being a town that welcomes and supports all of our residents. Can I leave you with this?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Lenore I think it's Douglas?
I thought I had to sign in.
Oh, just to attend? No, you don't.
Oh, okay.
Only to speak.
Would anyone else like to speak? Okay, thank you.
I'll,
Dan?
there's a microphone, I'm here.
I was say, I thought I was an imposter for a moment.
I figured.
Now we know you're here.
People saw me in a suit earlier today, they thought I was an imposter then too. I'm Dan Guller, 10 Walmsley Road. The Thriving Youth Task Force survey that was sent out last year showed that 5% of the general school population who consider themselves not to be part of the LGBTQ community, 5% of them had considered suicide at some point. Among the in the same survey, among the LGBTQ identifying students, that number went up to 35%. So if we're going to talk about mental health, if we're going to walk to prevent suicide, we got to look at the most vulnerable populations in our town. And right now, one of those is our queer kids. There is one easy thing that the town can do. I know there's a lot that we individuals can do, that you can do as individuals, but as leaders of the town, that flagpole says a lot. It speaks a lot louder than the flag that I fly from my house. I know the first time this was discussed, the first meeting back in August of 22, Marcy, you had just been to Hartford with your family to see the flag of your husband's ancestors' regiment from the Civil War. And you had talked about, I forget if you or Monica had talked about it, and you just sat there beaming. But it was a really moving moment, and I know I was moved, probably everyone else in the room was, that your children got to experience the history of their family, and they got, I don't know if they got to touch it, it's a really old flag, probably not, but that they got to be a part of it, they got to be a part of that history. And I can't help feeling that if today Governor Lamont said, we're not going to be displaying that flag anymore because it doesn't represent everyone in Connecticut, I think you would be upset, Marcy. I think John and Monica and Sarah and Mike would be upset. I would be upset. I barely know you. I've never even met your husband, and I'd be upset because that's wrong. So why would that be acceptable here? Sometimes representing everybody means recognizing the at-risk populations need a little extra help. John, last week you asked me what you can do for Pride. This is something you can do for Pride. I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. New business, discuss and take action on a request to approve the annual Darien road race on September 15th, 2024. Kate?
This is an annual request. For the first time, they will be running part of the race through Great Island. They received permission, and they've got all their approvals from Parks and Rec, Police Park, and Police Commission. So you should approve it.
I think this is terrific, and it's great that we could work in Great Island. I'm assuming that's okay with you, and yes?
Yeah, I'm just
Comments?
thinking about, like, how many people? Is 400?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the computer. I don't know how many
400
people.
runners.
400 runners, okay. I'm sure we'll make it work.
Okay. Other comments on this? Motion to approve the annual Darien Road Race as presented. Sarah moves. Mike seconds. All in favor? Okay. Second item, discuss and take action on a request for a special appropriation of $181,250 to the Board of Education operating expenses and to recommend same to the representative town meeting. So this pertains to something we've talked about and that the Board of Finance has talked about now for several months, and it's in anticipation of a shortfall in the Board of Education operating budget. This is something we've not seen much of in the past. Normally they run a surplus each year, but because of higher than budgeted costs for consultant services for special education professionals, out-of-district tuition, and student evaluations, they have started to run a deficit this year. So the proposed amount of $181,250 based on their latest estimate is what they're going to need to end the school year at break even. So again, we've been talking about this for a while. This is based on their latest estimate. We've known for months that this was coming. My recommendation would be to approve. Kate, anything to add to that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Comments, questions?
I know this is an unusual circumstance for the Board of Education. Do we have any word if this is going to be something that we might have repeating as we continue? Or is this kind of a one-off, do you think?
That's a good question. I think the phrase differently, the question would be is, are we going to continue to see a trend of special education related costs exceeding budget? The budget for that for this coming year is pretty robust and takes into account the increased usage that they're seeing now. So I think it's a question of just how well they budgeted that. They budgeted it pretty aggressively. My guess is that this will be okay for next year, but let's see what happens. Good question, though. Other questions?
No, I think they've carefully managed their budget, and most every single year in the past, they've given any excess back to the town, so I think they need it, they need it.
Yeah, I would agree.
This is not uncommon. There's been a couple of school systems in the paper that has been dealing with exactly this issue, so I don't give fault to the Darien Board of Education at all. It's truly a statewide, probably nationwide issue
Yep.
that many budgets are coming up short, so.
And these are expensive services, that's true. Okay. Motion to approve a transfer, motion to approve and recommend to the Board of Finance a contribution from fund balance of $181,250 to credit the Board of Education budget in the same amount. Motion.
We recommend to the RTM, not Board of Finance. I mean, Board of Finance has to approve it still, but
Okay. Okay, to the Board of Finance, thank you. Motion to approve that, Sarah? Mike, second, all in favor? Okay, thanks. Next item, discuss and take action on a proposal to revise the town's flag policy. Comments?
Well, I'll start, and for me, the genesis of this reconsideration is having heard from a fairly wide base of town leaders who expressed a desire to see a change in the flag policy. Plus, there is a history of other towns in this state having implemented a flag policy that allows for more than just the particular town, the state, and the national flag. In my view, to keep the policy as it is now is unworthy of us. It tells the people whose values these flags represent is that they are not worthy of our time or consideration. To our fellow taxpayers who are all Americans, nutmeggers, and Darienites, we are saying that Town Hall is closed to you. It's one thing to consider and decline. It's another to preclude and refuse. The argument that the administration of any flag policy is unduly burdensome is simply, at best, unsubstantiated and, at worst, without merit. I will agree that there are aspects of the Greenwich policy that are unwieldy, specifically Section 3B that allows for residents to make a flag request and expect consideration within 30 days certainly can create a condition where a town government is constantly considering flags. And I do think that that is unduly burdensome, and I would not consider a passage like that. But I think other aspects of their policy that, for instance, require consideration of flags to occur in January of a particular year. Perhaps residents could make their applications by November 30th, and the board could make a consideration of flag policies by, flag policies within that brief period, and then have the door closed to citizen submissions, still leaving the opportunity for the town by proclamation to consider something else if there was something emergent that was worthy. But in brief, and just to conclude, I think that there are ways to create a policy that allows for the consideration of these voices. I think that we have the intellectual and emotional capacity to do it, and I think we should at least try.
Other comments?
Yes,
Sarah?
I agree. I feel that this board is incredibly intelligent, and I see no reason why we can't, on an annual basis, look at the requests that have been made and decide whether or not we want to fulfill those requests. We've watched towns such as Greenwich, Ridgefield also, that have agreed to fly the pride flag. I feel that the current policy is extremely restrictive. I would like to see at least the pride flag and the POW MIA flag, flag is up. I see no reason why we can't go back to the flags that we had before. I understand there are concerns about flying other countries' flags, and we could make a policy where we don't do that. I understand that there's concerns about people, submitting superfluous flag requests in anger, and I feel that this board is very intelligent, and we could absolutely review them. And look at them on an annual basis. So I find supporting the LGBTQ community incredibly important, particularly for mental health, but also it's an inclusive environment. And I think it's so crucial to our kids. It's crucial to our adults in town, and I cannot endorse it enough. I feel it would be an incredibly important thing for us to do.
Thank you. Marcy, Monica?
I would say that I continue to support the policy that we have. I think that it's the ultimate and inclusive. It covers everybody in this town, right? U.S., state, and Darien. That's all of us. So I support the policy that we currently have.
I really see both sides of this. I'm a huge component that only government flags should be flown on government buildings. I understand the mental health component. I think if we're particularly having many people come in and particularly discuss the pride flag, which I am a huge advocate of displaying our pride among our town. However, I feel like we're opening a door for so many other organizations that feel disconnected. This is a tough one. I would be happy to look at other policies from other towns. I'd be happy to really dig into the legal aspect of things. At this point, I'm not comfortable changing it because I really think it opens the door for some liability, but I am open to having a conversation about how we could try to represent a more inclusive environment in our town, and in particular in the Pride Avenue.
Thank you. First of all, I'd thank everybody who's expressed their point of view on all this. This started with a series of emails that we began to receive, I'd say about 6 or 7 weeks ago, not quite 2 months. And over the course of that email writing, I suppose we've got probably 30 or 40 different requests. Not all of them in favor of changing the flag policy, although most of them were. And so most of those letters and emails requested that we adopt the Greenwich policy, which, Goody, you shared with us this evening, and which I've studied and considered. That policy sets a program where they, at the start of every year, they would review the slate of flags, they would vote on those flags, and then those would be the flags that would be flown at the designated times throughout the year. So I called Fred Camillo, who's the first selectman in Greenwich, and we talked at length about that policy and I tried to understand sort of how they put it into place and what the experience has been since then. When they put it in place, actually, the vote was not unanimous. The vote was 2-1 out of a 3-member board of selectmen. The reason it wasn't unanimous is that one of the members didn't feel that it went far enough towards permanently enshrining some flags as flags that they would always fly, as opposed to just saying we're going to have a list that we have to approve every year. She thought that if you did that, that flags that could be approved now, those could be taken off the list in a following year or under a different board of selectmen. And so she didn't think that was the right course of action, and they ended up with a divided vote. And so it's just a reminder that as much as there seems to be a point of view coalescing that the Greenwich policy is the right one to pursue, the reality is even that policy was not approved unanimously. Subsequent to January 1st, when Greenwich implemented that policy, they've had multiple requests for different kinds of flags that they've had to consider in their board meetings, review, and then decide whether to approve or not. And these were flags that were not on the list that they'd taken time to approve in advance of the January 1st start date. And so these were at least one country flag. Someone wanted the United Nations flag, figuring that that would be a unifying flag. Someone wanted a police flag that I think had been co-opted by the right and now didn't have the same meaning that it had 10 years ago. And all these have taken place, again, my understanding from Fred, this year, since they put in this flag policy. And so the reality is even by having a flag policy where they attempted to be inclusive, the fact is that it was put in and it was divisive when it was put in, and the amount of effort that they're spending now trying to adjudicate requests from people, not all of them trivial, some with good intentions, has consumed part of their agenda, and it's just something that they have to spend time on. I thought about the mental health aspect, and Marcia, you're right to emphasize that given your work, and Dan, your point's well taken about all of that. I think the fact is that a lot of the children that maybe are feeling not as included as they should be, I would point out that the Board of Education and the school districts don't fly the pride flag on school property. There's plenty of inside decorations during Pride Month, and I applaud that. But I would just say once more that those flags do not fly on our public schools. And I think it was for similar reasons that getting into an issue around which flags to fly and when and under what circumstances. I've not spoken with the district about that, but I suspect that was part of their calculus. But if you were to say that was a real issue, that the first place you'd want to fly these flags was at the schools where the children are. There are no kids here at Town Hall. Finally, I would say that in my discussions with people, and I've probably had upwards of 40 different discussions with people over the last few months, really probably since we put in the flag policy, but most of them since these emails came out, and I called a number of folks who had sent emails to talk to them about this. And I also talked to some people who are not comfortable changing our flag policy and believe that the 3 official flags that we have are the right ones. The good news is that I did not detect any bigotry in anyone that I spoke to, and I specifically probed for that. One of the things I think we can be proud of as a town is that we've advanced considerably. Again, no town is perfect, this one certainly not so, but we've advanced considerably as a town that takes the fair treatment and equitable treatment of other people seriously. Now, the folks that I talked to said that they preferred the town flags as they are, were serious, thoughtful, and mindful of other people here in town. I did not detect anyone thinking that, well, I just don't want the pride flag, or I don't want the Black Lives Matter flag, or some other flag like that. I did not detect that, not once, not even a bit, not in any conversation that I had in the debates about this. And so I come away from this saying that And like Marcy, in some ways, I'm torn because I think any group that wants to celebrate their uniqueness in town, whether it's a unique attribute, a unique history, a unique hobby, whatever that is, we should take the time to help those people celebrate. And I think the way to do that is by participating in the celebration that those folks want to have. And the way we do that, at least as I intend to do it for any group that wants to celebrate some aspect of their heritage or their beliefs, is to stand up with them, to be part of that celebration, to be part of the discussion, the dialogue, the history, the joy that you get with any kind of celebration like that. And I intend to be front and center on all of those, and we'll take an invitation from anybody to help join in the joy that they would like to project in celebrating their beliefs, their history, their legacy. And so I'm going to say that I stand by our current flag policy. At the same time, I would say that as a town, we should be celebrating these events, and I intend to do that as much as I can, in any venue, in any way, any parade, any speech, anywhere, at any time. The second thing is that we really need to show as a town, and not just government officials, but anybody here in town, any citizen of this town, if you see someone who is not feeling included, or worse, is being harassed or bullied because of their beliefs, whether they're a member of the Pride community or any community here in town, that behavior has no place in this town. The way we're going to demonstrate that is that we stand together with anyone who has that type of issue. So any of these children who have that type of problem, I would encourage other students around to gather around that person and make sure that that person feels welcome, to let them know that we care about their situation, that they're citizens of the town of Darien, and we don't take that here. We don't accept that behavior here. So I would just ask everyone, and as we come up to Pride Month and other celebrations that we'll be having over the course of the rest of this year, is take a moment and reflect on the folks who are asking for this to be celebrated. They're asking to be part of the team, part of the community. They're asking to be included, to be recognized, to be heard. Take some time to do just that. Take some time to take in that celebration and be part of it. I know many of you are disappointed that the flags are not flying on government property, but they fly at lots of other places, private homes, businesses, inside our schools, and that's a lot to celebrate, and we should be part of that. Again, I really appreciate everyone who's spoken out on this, and I look forward to trying to celebrate all these special events as much as I can in the coming months.
In light of Marcy's, comments, and I approach this as we're going to have a discussion, and we're doing that, but I think it would be proper for the record to actually approve or not approve a counter policy. So I would like the opportunity to come back with a policy to actually vote on, having had this discussion and understanding that the result may not be any different than the way people are speaking. But I think the proper thing to do now, having discussed it, is to actually vote on another policy, and I'm happy to author one and submit it, and we can
Be
vote on
happy
it.
to consider that, absolutely. I would welcome a further discussion and an actual vote on a revised policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Sarah,
I'd like
please.
to say 3 short points.
Please.
One is, I think, like it or not, this is part of our role in the Board of Selectmen.
Part of what?
Part of our role in the Board of
Okay.
Selectmen is
Yep.
to look at the flags. I know it's not everyone's favorite job, but I do believe it is the will of our residents. Secondly, we have spent time talking about the flags, and I understand that it will take time in the future, but I don't think this is a subject that we're going to be putting to bed and then never pick up again. I think this is what our residents would like, and I would like to be able to have those conversations with them and to fulfill those requests. We have been having the conversations about flags now for more than 18 months. And third, I'm unwilling to close the door and to never have this conversation again. I do feel very strongly I support Mike, and Mike, I would be happy to work with you on a new policy. But I feel very strongly that this is something that's very important.
I'm completely fine with that. We can have another discussion about this. We can discuss your drafts of revised flag policies. I'm happy to have that discussion. You do not have to close the door on that
Thank
topic. Other questions or comments? Okay. Next up, discuss and take action on proposed settlements of lawsuits. Kate?
So this is what we met in executive session about. So what we need is a motion to approve the settlement of Bellissimo versus the town of Darien, reducing the assessment from $4,329,310,000 to $3,780,000 for the grand lists of 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Got to get a motion to approve that? Sarah moves. Mike second. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, discuss and take action on a request for a special appropriation of $67,514 for a refund of a state school construction grant. Kate?
Yeah, the shuffle's never gonna leave us. Actually, this might, hopefully is the end of it. Because part of the shuffle included renovating the old building to accommodate the Board of Education offices, we were eligible for some state grants. And the state always audits the state grants afterwards. They don't always audit them in a timely fashion.
You think?
Does this date back to the Depression? I mean, good God.
Well, you know, honestly, they just, we don't have any control over that. So the audit results came in recently, and they identified some costs that were ineligible. There were costs ineligible because there was a lack of a bidding process or missing bid documentation or change orders. We did go back and fight some of it, but the net result is we have to return $67,514,000 to, wait, $667,514 to the state of Connecticut.
So and the reason was there were some aspects of the submitted work that did not go through a competitive bid process, and we missed that, or what?
Or it did and the documentation was missing.
Okay.
And I believe we attached, their letter.
The letter, yeah, I saw that. It is what it is. Any discussion?
No.
Motion to approve. Mike moves. Marcy second. Okay, thank you. All right.
There was only one, right?
Yes.
One lawsuit, right?
Next item, discuss and take action on a request for a special appropriation from the Great Island Advisory Committee for the preparation of a master plan. Monica?
So, yesterday was the one-year anniversary of the purchase of Great Island, and right now we are pleased, the Great Island Advisory Committee is pleased to request funding for the first two phases of our landscape architect project. This initiative is designed to establish a long-term vision for Great Island, and it includes engaging the public throughout the process, planning financial strategies, developing governance models, and identifying funding sources for future capital projects. So this project not only addresses immediate architectural needs, but also management of operation and maintenance costs going forward. In response to our RFQ, we received 16 submissions, and from 16 very highly qualified firms. And we narrowed it down to a short list of requests for proposals from 6 of those firms, and we coordinated interviews with the final 4 firms. We did about 7 hours worth of interviews last week. We are currently completing reference checks with plans to finalize the selection of the finalist in the coming weeks. So this deliberate and careful selection process underscores the project's significance and our commitment to a thoughtful, community-driven approach. The funding that we're requesting tonight supports the initial 2 out of the 4 phases for this project, creating a vision plan and creating a master plan and concept design. We are committed to ensuring this project is led by the community, starting with extensive community engagement, which will be right out of the gate in phase 1. The funding request reflects the higher end of the estimates that were received during the RFP process for the first two phases, and exact figures will be determined after we select that consultant, and we will present those details at the, those will be available before the RTM meeting in June. So I want to emphasize that this will be a very community-driven project, and that it will also take a while. So we plan on doing this in a very thoughtful manner going forward, and we thank the community for their support and ask for this appropriation.
Yeah, further to that, Sarah, you'd requested, and really all of us should request as well, just an assessment of where we are financially, and this will get to some of your comments, Rolf. So just going back on the Wayback Machine, we appropriated or secured an appropriation from the RTM in the amount of $103 million-ish, okay? So the reason for that appropriation was that was the price that we were going to acquire Great Island for, and we requested that and got that appropriation. Since then, with Monica's leadership, of course, as we all know, the price for Great Island came down to $85 million, so that left kind of $18 million sitting on the books as appropriated funds, but not spent. And just as a reminder, if it's appropriated, that means that we could technically go out and spend it. It's just like a building committee that has appropriated funds. If the money's appropriated, the responsible parties can go out and spend all of that money. So as part of the bonding process, we secured a combination of bonds and what are called bond anticipation notes in the amount, including bond premium, of just under $92 million. Okay. So of that $92 million, $85 million was spent on the property acquisition, which included a variety of other costs. And then since closing, we've done a few things like acquire the traffic circle and all that. The bottom line being we've spent, of those just under $92 million in bond and note funds, we've spent just over $87 million, which leaves a balance of, call it, $4.5 million. So you've got the $103 million in total appropriation that's sitting out there, less the $87 million, well, less the $87 million that we have spent, expended to date. Excluding this $2 million, which is a separate appropriation, but including this $4.6 million in bonded fund that's still sitting out there. Right now, those funds can actually only be used for a fairly discrete set of projects, which are around, quote, getting the island ready for access, and that can include remediation of some of the environmentally sensitive areas. It can include signage. It can include the 23A road work. These are all things that you'd have to spend, and we kind of discussed as needing to be spent in order to get the island really ready for full access. And some of that money, of course, has not yet been spent for reasons we've discussed earlier. So that's kind of an accounting of how you get from the $103 million that was originally appropriated, what we ended up borrowing, which was not the full $103 million, and then kind of what's left over in borrowed funds. My sense is that there's been a fair bit of concern about having an appropriation sit out there that's unspent, and having these bond funds that are sitting out there unspent. My recommendation is that we would ask the Board of Finance to rescind the appropriation that's not been spent, which would include these bonded funds, which would mean that going forward, just like Monica's doing for the $2 million for the consultants, is that for each future expenditure that we go through the normal appropriation process. So even though we have these bonded funds, we would go back to the Board of Finance and the RTM for any expenditure of those funds. Kate, comments?
Well, I think the remediation is not complete, and that's part of the original appropriation. And so I wouldn't be comfortable releasing all the money, but certainly, you know, over and above the $91 million, I think.
So the unbonded resolution,
unbonded,
but to leave this cash here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah, comments?
A couple. I look forward to receiving bids on the road work. We have no idea how much it's going to cost, and I think that needs to absolutely get done. I don't know what the estimates are to get 23A done as far as repaved and regraded and all the engineering work.
We received no bids, we don't know.
Right, but this is what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
we have no idea.
Yep.
And that definitely has to get done, so I can appreciate that, and I do appreciate the accounting. I would support that. I have a couple of questions. We're in a I think a tighter financial environment, we're paying very close attention to where we are as a town. We're trying to be thoughtful, looking at our budgets, Board of Ed budgets, and all of our budgets, making sure that we're paying, close attention. My concern lays in the fact that we've had some master plans done that we haven't maybe fully utilized. And I'm curious as to, you say phases 1 and 2. I don't know what those phases are, so I don't know how long it covers and what the 2 million covers. I'm not looking at the bid, so I don't know. But I would be curious to understand what's in it.
So, phase 1 and 2 are the vision and the concept plan. So, it basically gets us to the point where the next step would be bidding for developing the construction documents and going out to bid. So it includes meeting with the residents, meeting with the elected officials, all the stakeholders, coming up with what should we do out there. The bids range from about $900,000 to $1.9 million for the phase 1 and 2. What comes next really depends on what you all decide. The amount of time it will take to develop the plan, again, there's a wide range from, I think it was 7 months up to over a year.
Yeah, the first phase will figure about 4 months, and the second phase, don't hold me to this, the second phase probably 6 to 7 months.
Okay. So probably minimum a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the 2 million, does it cover legal, does it cover engineering, architecture, all of that, or what does it cover?
Yeah, the teams they put together are landscape architects,
Okay.
Engineers,
Mhm.
people who are experts in the permitting process, like getting us all the land use things we need to do, anything we need to do with DEEP or the federal government because of the water. It includes financial experts who will advise the committee on governance and what kind of revenue producing activities you might put out there, and knowing that there are trade-offs. There's architects because of the buildings. I'm trying to think.
There's signage, there's, for the environment, experts on that. Trying to think of all the different, some of these teams have like 13, it's a team of 13 firms.
Yeah.
So it's soup to nuts.
So I'll just piggyback or add to that and say that having had the opportunity to sit in on the interviews of these entities thus far, they've been grilled considerably and specifically about their abilities in creating public outreach and creating plans that have been fairly socialized. And then on the other hand, they have the ability to assess the feasibility of particular things. 100% of Darien could want to launch a rocket from Great Island, but they will also have the people that have the ability to say, well, that's great, but you can't do that. And and they've also, as Monica mentioned, they've been grilled on what the nature of governance is and what the potential opportunities are and what the mechanisms for fundraising and actually getting the funds to create the vision that the town might decide to pursue. And all of them seem to understand that they are creating a master plan that may well not be completed in a year or 5 years or even a decade. But I've been impressed by all of their diligence and the talent that they seem to amass, and they've been grilled pretty hard.
You're looking to me, so this is a group discussion.
These are good questions.
I'm just trying to understand
Those are
further
great
where we are
questions.
financially and what are we gonna do with this master plan. I want us to fully utilize it if we do spend the 2 million. It's my understanding that, so the two different bids, I guess one's 900,000, one's 1.9?
There are
four.
Four, okay.
There was one other, but it was significantly higher. It was for phase 1 and 2 was approaching 4 million.
Wow.
Roughly. Okay, so,
That's so variable.
yeah. But there are 4 that range from, like I said, 900 to the 1.9.
Got it.
The other 2 are in the middle.
Yeah, so what my understanding is what'll happen is we would approve kind of.
This is an up to.
This is a placeholder, right? This is up to $2 million. It's not going to cost more than that. By the time this goes to the Board of Finance, the Great Island Committee will have made a decision as to which one to recommend. Is that the plan?
If we're prepared to make that decision, we will. But our timeline is really RTM. And
Okay.
their rules meeting is June 3rd, so that's kind of the date that I have drop
Got it.
dead date
Okay.
for their June 17th meeting, so.
Okay, so they could adjust the appropriation to the
The
dollar.
Board of Finance could do the same as what we're doing, but we
Right.
want to have a solid number for the
RTM.
rules,
Got it.
obviously for the RTM meeting, but even
But
for the rules meeting.
Okay, that's helpful.
But like I said, right now, we're in the process, literally, of doing reference checks, and then we'll be discussing this. So I'm confident that we will be ready by June 3rd.
And I think, Sarah, to your point about not wanting a master plan that like sits on a shelf, I think that will be up to all of you as elected officials and your successors to make sure that it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not a cut, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
it can happen
It
anywhere.
can happen, yeah.
And it may have happened. So I want to make sure that we're, you know, particularly obviously with Great Island is not a blank slate, but, yeah.
There's so many different things to consider.
Yeah, pickleball courts for Mr. Burr.
Rockets.
Or, you know, the town pool that was in our master.
Well, one thing, based on your good question, I think this sheet here that just gives us a tracking of Great Island expenditures, we're going to make that part of the
I
every Board of
love it.
Selectmen.
The Board of
Okay.
Finance gets it every month, so.
We're going to have this at every meeting and just,
I love it. I think this is really
Just so
helpful.
we have
I
an
think this
update on
would help
that, and you
people
can always feel
understand. I
like
think the
that's
RTM should get this also. Question for you. So do we need to vote to have the remaining funds rescinded?
That's not,
before the
if,
6th?
I
when
would
is
the Board
that-
of-
not like.
Do we ask the Board of Finance to do that, or how does that happen?
Well, there may be subject to disagreement, but with Kate's clarification, we don't want to do this for the bonded funds that are sitting there, because we are going to use that for 23.
They can
and some
repurpose those if
remediation.
we don't need them in
We
the
can
end.
repurposed, but the amount, the 103 million less this total, which it looks like it's 91,771,000, that balance, which is appropriated but not bonded, there's no funds out there, it's
Right.
just an appropriated sum. But my recommendation was that we'd allow the process to rescind that
I would support
appropriation,
that.
so that for future expenditures, for which we've not done any contemplation, the RTM we can go through a regular appropriation process. I'd point out to Rolf's question, the $2 million that we're talking about here is a fresh appropriation
Yes.
to fund these consultants. And so by the time it gets to the RTM, part of the reason we're not reviewing all this right now is we've got 4 proposals that have not been decided on, so it's unwieldy to do that right now. But by the time it gets to the RTM, you'll have the one to look at that will tie it to the number being requested, so. Other comments or questions? Okay, motion to approve the transfer from fund balance of $2 million to the Great Island Master Plan in the amount of $2 million. Monica moves. Mike second, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Next item, discuss and take action on a proposal for a Pear Tree Beach flooding remediation project. So Craig Flaherty is here with us tonight, and I see that Mr. Gentile and Mr. Campanella are here as well. So before they get started on this, we have discussed this before. I had an opportunity to hear about the flood remediation part of this for the Pear Tree Point Beach and parking lot. Anybody who's been down there when there has been any kind of serious or fast rainfall can see that there is a real potential there for serious beach erosion. Lori Bora, who is Chair of Parks and Rec, she's here tonight and can also ask questions or answer questions. So this was brought up at the last Parks and Rec meeting that Lori led, And we discussed it briefly, and Parks and Rec recommended unanimously that this be brought back to the Board of Selectmen so that this project can move along. So where we are on this is that it's got three components. One of them is to address beach erosion and flooding at Pear Tree Point Beach and parking lot. The second piece is the reconstruction of the boat ramp, which is there on the north side of the lot. And the third one is a dredging project that would basically go from the boat ramp all the way around to, I guess, about the gas station or a little south of that for the benefit of that area. The latest estimate I heard was that to do all that work was in the $6.7 million zip code. That's not based on any bids, and I think is now a little bit bold in terms of those estimates. But in order for us to get a firm number that we would have to vote on an appropriation for, we would need this project to be to go out to bid. So I think the decision tonight to kind of move this project along and get it fully considered would be to get a sense of this board and then to initiate a request that we would move forward and seek bids on this project. So I'm the least informed person about this. Craig is here and can give us just a very, very short.
I'm calling Dan Biggs the other.
So as everyone knows, Craig is with Redness and Mead and is more focused on the flood remediation and parking lot part of this. The rest of the plan was developed by Weston and Sampson, and so Dan Biggs, that we're calling right now, is the expert on that.
This is Dan.
Hi, Dan. It's Kate Bush here. We're
Hi, Kate.
ready to put you.
Okay, I've been watching.
Okay.
1,000 of your closest friends are waiting with bated breath, Dan. Okay, so let me hand this over to Craig and Dan and Lori, if you'd like to come up. Let you guys kind of take it from here. I don't know that we need a hugely detailed presentation, but certainly I want to give this board a chance to ask questions.
Dan, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dan Biggs from Weston Sampson. I've been working with the town for a number of projects, starting with the Parks and Rec Master Plan back in 2018. And one of the projects was the further development or work at the Pear Tree Beach Park, which is what we're talking about tonight. And I'm a landscape architect by trade. And Craig, if you're there, you want to give it a shout out?
Sure. Craig Flaherty with Redness and Mead. We were brought on to support Weston and Sampson, specifically with the analysis of the flooding of the low-lying Pear Tree Beach Park. Obviously you have stuff in your, I think when this originally started, right, there were three components of the project. One was the building, two was the beaches and parking area, three was the dredging. The building was dropped from consideration after some public sentiment drove that removal. The other two components are really will improve the beach aesthetically, ecologically, and for use by our residents, but are also grounded in needed infrastructure improvements that happen over time and are happening in particular because of sea level rise and climate change. So the two components left are the dredging and the parking area and beach improvements. I don't know how much of this deck you want us to go through, but went through a process effectively that ended, or at least ended, culminated, I'll say that, in an approval from DEEP in October of 2022 for the considered improvements. And so, you know, this talks about this, and Dan, please jump in if you feel I'm lacking. It's just easier since I'm here looking at everybody.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So the priorities were protect views, maintain the natural qualities of the beach and park, improve beach resiliency, and reduce wind and water erosion by increasing the natural shoreline areas, prevent dispersal of sand onto the parking area, particularly during high tides and storm events, raise the parking lot elevation to minimize flooding and beach erosion, and repair and reconstruct the boat launch. The considerations, of course, are the balance between views and buffers, maintain accessibility to the beach, improve storm resiliency, consider boat trailer maneuverability, and go through all the permitting. The approval that has been granted includes the reconstruction of the parking lot. It includes the additional beach area, which is primarily on the west beach, which right now at spring tides goes to almost zero. It's also the lowest area of the parking lot, which we'll talk about. Included the reconstruction of the boat ramp, included dredging the channel, which is, as is normal, silting in over time and becoming shallower and shallower and less navigable.
Sorry, Craig, just to that point on permission valid for 5 years. With regard to dredging, what does that and does that not include?
Dan, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, sure. So the certificate of permission was issued on October of 2022. So all the work that you see on the screen, items 1 through 5, are permitted to be completed within 5 years of the issuance of that permit. That includes the dredging work, which is the channel and out around the bend of where the boat club is, as well as the other on-site improvement. So you really have until 2027 to complete that work at a minimum to show that you're making progress. And we would have to go back to DEEP to request an extension of that permit if the work is not completed.
Got it. Thank you.
So this is kind of picture indicating where the improvements are. So you can see on the west side where the existing curb line is and where the proposed curb line is, and on the south side where the existing curb line is and where the proposed curb line is. So that creates more beach. It also allows the beach to slope up a little bit and allows for some vegetation to be added between, just off the parking areas. And this, part of my assistance here was to talk about the why behind this and why it is somewhat urgent. So you saw some pictures. This is the low point in the parking lot. There's a catch basin there. It's at elevation 4.2 based on a particular datum. Just to give you an idea of how low that is, Weed Beach is largely an average of 8, anywhere between 7 and 9. So the average of this parking lot is a good 3 or 4 feet below Weed Beach, which is why people have witnessed this parking lot flooding so frequently when they haven't witnessed Weed Beach flooding. Now, both are in a floodplain. When we get storms like Sandy or Irene in 2011 and 2012, even under proposed conditions, this whole thing will be underwater, right? When we have those intense events, this is not about that. This project is really about daily use, having access to the park and maintaining that access of the park over the next 50 years, let's say. So this is the low point. Largely, the entire parking lot drains down to that low point. So it's almost a funnel to that location, and that ends up very low. And so what happens with that low point, the other thing I think worth pointing out is this green line. That's the coastal jurisdiction line. Any work seaward of that line is what you have to go to the DEP and Army Corps for approvals on. So anything we want to do here is, in terms of filling or drainage work, is under state jurisdiction. So this is a picture of basically a storm event. I think it was a nor'easter at the time. And this is in the foreground, that low point catch basin. So we get a storm event, and it's going to push waves up onto the parking lot, it's going to push beach up onto the parking lot. So this is one of the maintenance issues that Park and Rec has to deal with from time to time. In reverse, so this is coastal flooding, this is Long Island Sound coming up and waving in. In reverse, we have rainfall events. So this is just after Ida, 2021, I believe. Because the whole parking lot is a funnel, when we get these incredibly intense rainfall events, and these pipes and catch basins currently are prone to clogging because of things like this, the rainwater sheeting off the land pours over that curb on the low point and takes the beach away. So this is a maintenance issue that Park and Rec has to deal with. But what I also have tonight, and we'll talk about a little more in detail, is what people observe and have been observing on even sunny days. So not coastal flooding events, not rain events. I happened to be at the beach last Labor Day. This was the condition on that day, on a very crowded day, because it was Labor Day during the summer. The entire West Beach was effectively submerged. Water was starting to build up over the cars that were parked near that catch basin and low point. And you can see it's a beautiful sunny day with no weather event. Then we have, I believe this was January of this year. Again, a blue sky day. Given the geometry of Long Island Sound, if you get a stiff wind out of the east, that has a tendency to push water up into the western reaches of Long Island Sound, kind of like a sloshing bathtub. This was sent to me by someone who parked their car to go walk the loop, and when they got back around the loop, found that they couldn't get their car out through the main gate, had to get the police to open up the auxiliary gate kind of towards the high point by the barbecue area and get out that way. And then, again, people now send me pictures. So this is, I think just a month or so ago, very similar conditions to the Labor Day condition. This is basically covering the first parking stalls, the first parking aisle, the next two parking stalls, and then most of the next parking aisle, right? So this would be probably 18 inches deep where that catch basin is. So this has been happening more frequently because sea level is rising. We've already seen in the last, say, 50 years, 5 or 7 inches, 6 plus or minus inches of sea level rise. So what this chart does, and I'll explain it to you, describes how much more frequently things happen when you're at the top of the tide cycle and you just raise that bottom up a little bit. So this is all depths. Each column is, each row is the depth of water at that catch basin grade, just as a reference point. So whereas 50 years ago, you might have once a month seen 6 inches of water at that catch basin grade, not a big deal, not a big nuisance. Now you're seeing that happen once a week, 6 inches of water at that catch basin grade. And instead, every once a month, you've got 12 inches of water at that catch basin grade. Then, and these are, I should also say, these numbers are simply related to the lunar tide cycle, has nothing to do with weather events. So when you bring in the fact that all you need is the wind blowing from a certain direction to pick the water level up, you know, there are 50, 60 events a year recorded at Bridgeport that are above the normal tide cycle because of the nature of wind and weather on any given day. So much more frequently you have more pressure on this, but this is just the typical tide, nothing else. And so instead of once a month having 6 inches of water there, now once a month you got 12 inches of water there. That's kind of current condition, just tides, no weather. Obviously you've seen the pictures of what happens with some weather. Then we looked at some scenarios of what happens as sea level continues to rise, 6 inches, 12 inches, 20 inches. So there is a planning guideline that's in effect in Connecticut, prepared by the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Climate Adaptation. And that's really what we're talking about with this project, adaptation and resiliency. That between 2000 and 2050, you should plan for up to 20 inches of sea level rise. And so there's a guidance document. So as we look at the thought of another 6 inches of sea level rise, that would be the middle column. What is currently happening once a week will happen twice a week. So now once a month, we'll have 18 inches of water at that catch basin instead of 12 inches of water at that catch basin, non-weather events. If you have 12 inches of water, you see again, this goes up exponentially by a multiple of about 8 for each foot. So what's currently happening once a month will now be happening more than 2.5 times a week. And at 12 inches of sea level rise, now you got 2 feet of water at that lowest catch basin. So very simply, no action means you will cede Pear Tree Park to the sea. What is maybe a tolerable nuisance today is very quickly going to become an intolerable one that is going to negatively impact the ability to use this resource in the future. So the idea behind, again, this is kind of a picture of the areas that flood on certain cycles today, non-weather events. And then if we add 12 inches of sea level rise, the type of flooding that we're going to see. So this is current sea level, this is at a foot to sea level. You can see again how it's exponential not only in frequency, but it really starts taking over a lot of area when it's dealing with a flat parking lot to fill up. So the proposal is to elevate all of those low points and get them as high as we can, working with the grades around. And this wasn't a slam dunk as far as the DEP was concerned, because they are coming off of decades of policy where they're trying to avoid filling shorefronts and creating structural shorefronts. But they're starting to soften on that stance because of adaptation and resilience. Some properties are low, and we only have one choice but to pick them up. So by picking up that curb line where all that red is, and the brown even, and changing the way everything drains and improving the drainage system, helps all of these things. It'll reduce this from happening because that curb line will be higher, so the sand won't come over. It changes this, so instead of a funnel down to the low point, the rainwater will have a bunch of bellies to flow into. So this won't happen, or will significantly reduce when it happens. And then days like this won't happen. Now, I should say, days like this still may happen to some degree, but instead of having 24 or 30 inches of water in certain areas of the parking lot, you'll now be dealing with 6 or 8 inches of water in certain areas of the parking lot. So it significantly reduces the frequency of these maintenance events, of these lack of access events. So if we completed this in the next couple of years, this is what would happen through that normal lunar tide cycle. 0 of the parking lot would flood. If we project out in the future, 30, 40 years, and we get 12 inches of sea level rise, again, it's minor. We're down to certain areas flooding less than once a month, and of, maybe 6 or 8 inches of flooding. So this is about buying time against sea level rise. There will still, of course, be weather events and coastal flood events that exceed this level and exceed the level of Weed Beach and exceed the level of other areas. But this is, again, really about sunny day access to the beach, which is when we want access to the beach. I think
Thank you.
that's the why behind why we think it's important.
Dan, did you have any comments on the boat ramp redesign or on the dredging around the boat club?
So since we got the COP in hand, we have talked with the the advisory committee, I forgot the formal name, that's looking to dredge the rest of the channel. We did explore the potential of that work overlapping or occurring in concert with each other, and Deep actually suggested that there be a separate COP submitted to do that additional dredge work. So if they could move forward that permit process, that would be great. The construction could occur at the same time, but there would be no kind of marrying of those two permits per se. The dredge does need to occur at the base of the boat ramp and around to the edge of the boat club in order to make the boat ramp function once it is reconstructed. So they kind of work in concert with each other. And the most efficient is going to have to do as much work on this parking lot at once, since there's going to be a laydown or dewatering component to any of the projects. But we also are realistic that funds and access is not completely available. So depending on what the town chooses to do, that would be great. But from a construction standpoint, these improvements are needed, and really it's the time is winding down the permit, so it's advisable to make some actions happen as we get closer to that 2027 deadline.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Sarah?
We are a coastal community. This is one of our most beautiful assets. There has been demonstrated need for this site work for I don't know how many years. For as many years as I've sat on this board of selectmen, we've been hearing about this. We have to do something about it.
What's the ability to get an extension on the permitting? You said that we're at 5 years, but you can apply for an extension. What's the degree of difficulty on that?
Deep will not promise anything. The best thing that the town can do is show that the town is committed to making these improvements and to make a reasonable or realistic attempt at completing as much of the work as possible. That will leverage the town to, I'll say convince, but to persuade Deep to extend the permit. The Deep does not have to extend the permit, and if they don't, then you have to renew and file for a new permit, which, as everyone knows the process, or does not know, it took a significant amount of time and effort to do that. So it's advisable to at least make a good faith effort to make improvements, and then we'll be in a better position to extend if we had to, with Deep, knowing that the town is committed to this project.
I don't want to parse words or phrases with you, but would you say it's more like substantial progress or good faith?
Thank you for that, Counselor.
I think you need to make some progress, I would say at a minimum, but you definitely make good faith to progress to several items that were permitted for this project. So you can't just do all the ones, say the boat launch and the channel and kind of be done with it. They want to see a action to make an effort to complete all the aspects that were included in the permit, because those took some significant review on their end and approvals to get that included within the COP.
So Dan, if it is renewed, if we do get an extension, is it for 5 years, or is it a 1-year term, or is it a 5-year term?
They did not commit as to what that extension would be. It could be a year or two. It kind of depends probably on what improvements have been made to date and what we can kind of portray to them on the timing to execute the rest of the work, and kind of convince that it's in the town's interest that they're going to complete the work.
But it hasn't been 2 years yet, right? Like,
Year and a half.
right, so we need to get going.
Other questions for Dan and Craig? Lori, do you have any comments from your board?
Lorraine Barra, Chair of the Parks and Rec Commission. I mean, Sarah, your comments weren't lost on me about referring to master plans and wanting to see actions on them. As you know, master plans in and of themselves are expensive to produce. And shortly after we completed the Parks Master Plan, it was strongly recommended by the then Board of Selectmen that Pear Tree take priority in terms of things that we should be getting going on. And we started that process, as Craig and Dan alluded to. There was not community support to replace the building under FEMA guidelines. To do anything to that building of significance, it would have to have been raised a full story, and there was a lot of opposition to that. Things went on a bit of a pause during the pandemic, but it was decided and recommended that we proceed with the permitting process. So at this point, the idea is to leave the building alone, see what happens. You just saw the picture. Sometimes it gets surrounded by water, so I don't, we can't say how long that building will hang in there. We just spent about $50,000 to renovate the bathrooms themselves. They look very nice for what we were working with. Please go see them. They just opened up yesterday. And you'll know we did some landscaping along Pear Tree Point Road and then in front of the building. So we've made that look as nice as we can, but it doesn't address the flooding risks that Craig has pointed out. This is a very well-loved, very, very well-loved beach. People were clearly very passionate about what they do and don't want there. Now people are starting to say, oh, we have Great Island, we don't need to worry about Pear Tree or Weed Beach. I personally don't accept that. I think all of our beaches are going to be in demand. So these events continue to happen. It is a tremendous strain on the parks crew when we have these events. Weed Beach, we have the dunes, and we don't have this problem of the sand coming into the parking lot. You really can see that difference. So, as you said, the clock is ticking. We're going to have to do something at some point.
Marcy.
It's a question of when. To me, this is no longer a matter of beautifying the beach or restoring our assets. I mean, that's the obvious. It's becoming a safety issue for anybody who may have a vehicle in there that gets flooded in 18 inches of water and then has to carry themselves or their children through that and then try to get their car out. There's a pretty good chance that they're going to be putting an insurance claim in for a flooded vehicle, which someone who knows, that's very irritating. I would put this as a priority for us to take care of when we start to look at our Park and Recs projects, far ahead of the Weed Beach project at this point. I think it's something that needs to be done and well short of the 3 years that we have to do it.
Yeah, the other thing we need to think about is the boat ramp is used by many members of the boat club to launch and get their boats into their water. And if we lose access to that park, or really, because then all of a sudden we've effectively lost our boat club.
I mean, just imagine whether you go out on a boat or out on a kayak and you come back 2 or 3 hours later. Or more.
You're can't get in.
Entirely different.
Yeah.
Where your car
That's my
was,
concern,
and-
Or take a walk over to Great Island.
That's happening now regularly.
Yeah.
Craig, what's the net change in parking places?
Yeah, I've got that. It's on this chart, I think.
31 loss.
31 down. So from 225 available today to 194 available tomorrow. You had mentioned this on the phone with me, and I don't know if this is feasible, but perhaps you could look into. If we have a security guard there all summer, is there a way to have someone count the in and out on the 10 Saturdays, right? And then you get a real good sense of demand for the parking lot in the summer.
That's actually a good idea. We should do that.
Well, part of the concern is there's 225 now, but on the day where there's water.
Yeah, see, exactly.
Yeah, oh my goodness,
Totally
yeah.
get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
There will be, yes, 194 will be much higher than the existing 225.
So I think it's pretty important that we move immediately to a bid phase on this so we can have some real numbers, kind of to your point, Sarah, to look at and get an appropriation that we can recommend to move forward with this. Any comments about that?
I support it.
Okay, do we need a vote on that?
No, but you're going to need bid documents
Yeah.
to go out to bid, and there's going to be a cost for that.
Okay.
So
We need to approve that cost.
we're going to have to find out how much that will be. Dan?
Yes. I'll be in touch.
Sounds
Yes,
like
ma'am.
Yeah.
you could ask Dan for a proposal tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Dan, go do that, please.
Do we need to?
Did you hear we were talking about, Dan?
No, but do we need to approve that? Do we need to approve the
Well, what
request
we
for
need-
him to put the
don't.
bid
Well-
documents together?
No, what we want is for Dan to give us a price on putting the bid documents together.
Got it.
And Dan, this project, we're actually going to do this project, so
Okay, great. I'm ready.
Other
Okay.
questions? Okay, thank you.
Right.
Craig, thank you very much for coming. And Dan, we really appreciate your dialing in tonight. Thank you. Lori, sorry.
Thank you all.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, yes.
Oh.
Actually, Dan, if you could stay on, we got one more topic.
I'm here.
So next item is transfers, discuss and take action on a request for a transfer of $25,000 to the Wheat Beach Meadow and Trail. Lori?
I'm back again, Lorraine Bora, Chair of Parks and Recreation Department. As you know, we went out to bid for the Weed Beach Meadow and Trail project, and the bids came out much higher than we had hoped. And in your discussion, you reverted it back to the Parks and Rec Commission to discuss next steps. And I think, Mike, it was you specifically who asked us to investigate what we could possibly do for the $1 million that we had hoped we were going to come in at. So Dan and I spoke about it, and he has indicated he does have, some ideas of how he could phase the project, so we would do it in several steps, so at least we could get something going down in that parcel, which again, the town has owned for over 10 years, and it was in our master plan to do various things to it, and for various reasons, we haven't gotten there yet. So Dan has indicated that the fee to develop the rephasing plan would be $12,000. In addition, at this time, the Parks and Rec's crew did do some preliminary work on the site, clearing out invasives, some trees that were meant to be removed during the project. It's just left bare dirt at this point, and it's our recommendation that the parks crew do the work to just kind of level off and even the dirt, get some grass seed down for the summer, and then plant some trees to replace what was removed effectively, which would also help with screening that some of the neighbors have indicated that they want. And the cost for the trees is up to $5,000. The parks crew can do the work, but Jeremy Ginsburg, in conversations, he and I and another commission member, as well as Jim Coughlin and Rick Talamelli, met down at the site, and Jeremy strongly recommended that this work be done under the supervision of Dan Biggs, so that everything they do is, in keeping with the approved plan of work that was approved by P&Z. Dan indicated they would do that on a time and materials basis, and he quoted up to $8,000. It may not be that much, but he would, Sandy would go to him, Sandy Rich, our park supervisor, say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Dan will take a look at it, say, yep, this is in keeping with the plan, and then when the work is done, certify it. And again, that came at Jeremy's recommendation. So the total of those three items is $25,000. Questions?
Lori, one of the things that was mentioned at the Parks and Rec meeting that I went to the other day was Desire, Jim Furlong, who's the head of the Norton Bay Association, as well as others. They just wanted to make sure that they had a chance to kind of look at these plans as they were developed. So for the remediation, if you will, or the cleanup part of this $25,000, have those folks had a chance to look at that? Have you gotten any input as to
I've
whether
spoken with
it's
Jim,
kind of
and
small?
we agreed I was going to get through tonight, see
Okay.
if we get the green light, and that I would arrange. He's asked that Dan would meet with him, would probably do a virtual meeting, and really just review the plans. I think the board of directors of Norotan Bay, there's just been enough back and forth from different residents that they would just like to hear the details of the plan directly. I mean, Dan did present it in a public forum last July at one of our meetings. There were members of the Norotan Bay Association were definitely there that night. Some were at the P&Z hearings. Nonetheless, the board members have said, we would just kind of like to go over this with Dan one more time. And then the other thing Jim and I talked about is in terms of placement of the trees, we would like to coordinate that through the Norotan Bay Board, certainly, and have them go out and get the input from the abutting neighbors. But we think it would be best to work through them.
So just make sure my question was clear. So I know that they were at the table for some of the stuff that led up to the project that was over budget. I just want to make sure of this little piece, just given it's very sensitive and it pertains to the area that was cleared, that really just got a lot of people upset. Just to make sure that little piece, even though there's not much work being done, to make sure, particularly Jim in his role, but Luke Raymond, others, just have a chance to take a look at this, because what I don't want is that work starts and to have 30 people come in and say, this work started, and we had no input into that at all.
Yes, we will do that. We will do that via the Norotan Bay Board of Directors, which is what
Okay,
we've been asked to
fine.
do.
All right, good.
And
Got a
they
question?
will coordinate with the neighbors and get the appropriate people at the
Okay,
table,
thank
who
you.
they feel are the appropriate people at the
All
table.
right, thank you. Sarah?
5,000 seems low for 15 trees.
Dan, that's the number you gave me. You said $300 a tree, I believe?
Yeah, and this was intended to be installed by park staff too, so they would be able to put in those trees.
No, I understand that we'll be doing the labor. I'm just trying to understand, how big are these trees? Yeah, A, how big are these trees? What kind are these trees? And it seems awfully low for 15 trees, because I know what it costs to go to a nursery to go get a tree.
Yeah, we have these as 1.5 to 2 inch. There's a selection of deciduous and evergreens. I don't have the plan in front of me at the moment, but we can certainly get.
So like pine trees, evergreens?
Evergreens and deciduous.
Right, that's what I'm just trying to understand. So it's, what is it, like a 6 foot or a?
Oh, yeah, 6 to 8 for evergreens.
Yeah, okay.
Other questions? Okay, nothing? Okay. All right.
Yeah, we would like to, I mean, we feel it's important to get the area cleaned up and looking nice and usable for the public. Right now, it's not completely usable, and this will definitely help make the area usable. I mean, I want to give a shout out that through an Eagle Scout project, we had many, many volunteers down at Wheat Beach the last 2 weekends, myself included, hands and knees ripping up weeds and replanting seagrass. So really, it's gotten, we're working with volunteers really doing the maintenance that the town should be doing, to be blunt.
Lori, will this area be like off limits for a while? Until the grass
Just till the grass seed comes up
So
for a few weeks, and that was one reason we wanted to get this in now, is it's obviously a very good planting season. We don't want to wait for another month, but.
Just a couple of weeks.
So we'd like to get it done soon. But the Parks Crew plant, we removed invasives for the back part of the park behind the picnic area last summer, and the staff put down grass seed. It actually came up very quickly and very nicely. And we don't water it, we don't have irrigation, we don't fertilize, it just, the seed goes down and they keep after it and they spot treat. But we've had good luck getting the grass up reasonably quickly. And they do have the watering trucks though. Now I think you guys bought them a watering truck, so that really helps.
That was the second Eagle project down there, right? Wasn't there?
The little library was
Okay.
down there last year, which unfortunately was vandalized a few weeks ago, but the Parks Crew took care of that as well.
Good scouts.
Yeah, so they've been very helpful.
Okay, so we would pull this out of the Board of Finance reserve, and it'll be funded directly from there. That's appropriated, if I have that right.
The transfer form. Yes, that's what the.
Yeah, that's what was put down.
Yeah.
All right, so could I get any other discussion?
Just
Marcy.
a comment, I guess. As we go through the $12,000 rephasing plan, I again want to make my statement that I think Pear Tree Point is much more of a priority. So I would not like to have them come back and say, okay, this is another $1 million project. I want it to be really reasonable and realistic on something that, when we're looking at this, fiscally and responsibly, that it's not this massive, huge financial investment on this project right now. To get it up and moving and livable and usable at a fiscally responsible phase, I can go through this, but I definitely don't want to throw a $12,000 rephasing fee on something that is definitely out of our budget, especially considering some of these other major projects that we have on the pipeline.
I hear you, and I think Dan hears you, and we will keep that, but we'll just say there's invasives remediation, there's shoreline restoration,
Yeah.
so.
That to
things
me is
that are-
fine.
Yeah.
You come in with something that's elaborate and a want, not a need, it's going to be difficult for me to approve it.
Other questions for Lori?
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, thanks, Dan.
Certainly.
Motion
Thank you.
Motion to approve a transfer of $25,000 from the Board of Finance reserve to the Wheat Beach Meadow and Trail account, and to recommend same to the Board of Finance. Mike moves, Sarah seconds. All in favor? Okay. Lori, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Hi, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay. Last transfer, discuss and take action on a request to transfer $30,000 from ARPA Department of Public Works garage floor to ARPA Mather Center.
They've waited
HVAC.
so patiently.
They've been waiting very patiently.
This is Ed's second home.
It is.
He hasn't left.
Mr. Gentile.
Can I clear a room or what?
Yeah, you have that effect on people. And once again, even Lori's running from the room.
Good evening, Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. I'm joined tonight, Anthony Campanella, Facilities Supervisor. We're here to ask for a transfer of ARPA funds from our garage floor project to the Mather Center HVAC improvement project for $30,000. Just a quick recap, the project at Mather Center is the replacement of a 30-ton AC unit that wasn't done as part of the renovation for the Mather Center some 10 years ago, I believe. This unit is close to 25 years old right now and is running on one compressor. We have it up and running now. It'll work through the summer. But the second compressor unit that's in there is not replaceable or repairable because of its age. Unlike the one at the other end of the hall, we were able to actually repair that today.
Thank you.
So hopefully tomorrow we'll get to see how it works.
Oh, the one for the 500
Yeah.
decibel unit is working now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We're going to work on the volume also.
Good.
Tomorrow.
What's that, huh? I'm sorry.
I gave you some of the math in here of what we're doing. We did get a capital request approved over a year ago, 2 years ago, for $100,000 for multiple different projects at the Mather Center. One of them was the compressor unit, condensation tank, and coil unit. We've done those smaller jobs already to the tune of about $32,000, which left us a balance of just around $67,000. There was a state grant that the Mather Center had got to do some work on their HVAC unit that was $44,000. Add those two together, got us to about $111,000. Low bid came in at $136,000. There lies the difference that we're asking for now with a small bit of contingency. So I rounded it up to about $30,000. Just as an aside, there's always the last question, are there enough funds left available for the garage floor project? There absolutely is. We've came in under budget on that project.
Nice.
The floor came out nice. We're just wrapping up this last piece, which is the garage doors, which was very difficult to find someone to finish. So, but that's where we're wrapping up. So there are enough funds in that ARPA project to complete it, and I'll be turning back the balance of it to the town to use.
Questions for Ed on this?
Nope.
Okay. Motion to approve a transfer from the DPW garage floor in the amount of $30,000. Sorry.
I'll move. We're done.
Oh,
We're
she's
good.
going to move what I was going to say. This is the sort of, anyway, okay. Monica moves, second. Sarah second. All in favor? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is minutes from the Board of Selectmen regular meeting on April 22nd, 2024. I have read through these and did not have any edits. Does anyone have any edits or questions?
Nope.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes from April 22nd, 2024. Sarah moves, Mike second, all in favor? Okay.
You wanted to add an item?
Yes, we need to do new business. So new business is going to, we need a vote to go into new business, right?
You need a motion to add the special
add.
appropriation to the agenda.
All right, so I'd like a motion to add a special appropriation to the agenda. So this appropriation is in the amount of $1,074,000. This is something that we started to discuss before, but tabled so that we could have additional information. These pertain to security investments for the schools, which we've discussed at some length. But we need to approve that tonight and refer that to the Board of Finance. Could I get a motion to add that to the agenda? Sarah moves, Mike second, all in favor? Okay. Discussion, questions?
Thank you
No? I
for,
think we're all good? Okay. Could I get a motion to approve the transfer of $1,074,000 from Kate?
That's up to the Board of Finance.
Okay.
And I don't have an actual form,
Born today.
so you're,
To approve a transfer as determined by the Board of Finance to fund school security measures, again, in the amount of $1,074,000. Sarah moves, Mike second, all in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Kate. I had that written down and glossed over it. Agenda review. I've got one thing to add. We've talked before about just making sure all of the ARPA funds were adequately encumbered so that we don't miss any deadlines on that. So sometime in June, could we have a
Yeah.
discussion about that?
yeah, Jen and I have been keeping an eye on that, and I think we're ready to, well, I think there'll be a couple of hard decisions to make. We're going to have to talk to some of the groups that just have not gotten their projects underway, period. So we're looking at ways to perhaps keep those projects alive, and find other financing sources for them before we do any reallocation. So I think we'll be ready for that for you at your June meeting.
Well, tell them they can do that, or they can come talk to me.
Oh, yeah, okay.
How long have the
That'll
funds
be a
been
short
appropriated?
discussion.
2 years?
Over a year now,
Yeah,
yeah.
we just need to clean that up.
I mean, in some instances, there's one specific instance where we've gone out to bid multiple times. And it's just, we had like no bids, or they came in way over. And, that group has really tried to get this done.
I don't mean those, I just mean there's some that haven't been started, so I was just curious.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. That was all I had for agenda review. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, motion to adjourn. Mike moves, Marcy seconds, all in favor, adjourned. Okay, thank you, we are adjourned.